So today I came across an article about a prison in India that operates on an open system, and that I thought was quite interesting and an incredibly interesting approach to a prison system as a whole. I've been interested in this kind of thing for a while, so I thought it would be interesting to just look over different prison systems, as not fun as that sounds, and also what I believe the key ways of prison systems are. So in this article, the Indian prison system that was set up is for a little over 400 people, so it's quite small scale. And the general principle is these are serious offenders, a lot of them are murderers, and to be admitted to this specific prison, they have to have had 2/3 of their sentence served in a closed prison. This means they cannot leave the facility. Now, the idea behind the open prison is that you can leave. This is an incredibly direct form of integration. You literally go back into society. Obviously, this can be abused a lot. There are specific rules. You have to have a roll call every evening, which you have to attend, and you're only provided with a house, somewhere to sleep. They do not give you food. They do not give you anything else. So this encourages the prisoners to go out into the village and the city beyond and earn themselves money. Now, this has its own setbacks, obviously, because a lot of people see they are prison inmates and they don't want to hire them, so this is a negative to the system. However, a lot of them are able to get work in things like security and just general jobs around the area. So, thinking on what I think the key principles of a prison system are, I have come up with 3 key points. The first is that prison should act as a deterrent, it should act as a punishment, and it should act as rehabilitation. As for the deterrent, this is to essentially stop crimes before they happen. Not in a cool Minority Report way, but merely showing that if you commit crimes, you will be given punishment. The two are a bit interconnected, but deterrent comes first. It's meant to show if you do something bad, there will be something bad that happens to you. This is in the form of showing that crimes have enough punishment, so sentences aren't too lax, and the physical environment you're in isn't too cushy. When it comes to the environment as well, it shouldn't be horrible, even if it is a deterrent. Obviously, it shouldn't be a 5-star hotel, but if prison is shown to be a terrible place, then this isn't a good deterrent because it demonizes criminals, as weird as that I guess sounds. A big part of my belief with how prisons are run is that at no point should criminals feel as if they are not people. Because when addressing criminals, you have such a broad range of things. You could have someone who stole a few times, and you could have someone who killed 100 people. And yes, I do believe on all ends of the scale, they are people and they should be treated with basic humanity. However, with this deterrent, there needs to be levels. So obviously, not all crimes should carry the same sentence or the same reactions. And as good as an open prison system is, it is not applicable in all areas. And it should not be advertised as being applicable in all areas, otherwise more severe crimes seem like they have less severe consequences. One of the more interesting points when it comes to how much of a deterrent prison is that even the existence of prisons in itself can act as an encouragement for crime in a very strange way. So, I recently read something talking about the elderly in Japan, and how to avoid being a burden on their families, they would intentionally be arrested and imprisoned based on things like shoplifting and very small crimes. This was a societal issue that the prison system was not correctly adjusting for. These people didn't want to be arrested, they wanted to stop being a drain on the resources of their family. They wanted to have a safe space to live. There's also quite a common thing that's dated back to literally Victorian times, where people would intentionally be arrested to escape poverty. Because even though you're arrested, you have a roof over your head, you have meals, and there's a lot that benefits you. And presenting that as an option shows a failure in your prison system. Because if the impoverished have to commit crimes to live, there is a failure in other systems that need to connect to the prison system. Ideally, prison should be the last point of call if you have a crime. For instance, things like psychiatric treatment beforehand or after crimes. So things like forensic units of forensic units, prior what's the term? Prior interception of people who are potentially at risk of committing crimes, either for where they are socially, economically, or due to mental health. This again is quite an idealistic view, I know. So the second point is punishment. If you do in fact commit a crime, there needs to be consequences for this. This is in part of deterrent again, because it deters future crimes, but not in the same way. So again, this is to do with how long sentences are. For instance, giving someone a week for stabbing someone isn't a particularly good punishment. Crimes need to match how they are treated. And again, you can't just spread a brush over all crimes, and also not all instances. Again, sometimes part of the punishment is where they go, so the level of security in a prison, and also the way they are treated. I don't mean this as in, you can just assault a guy because they killed someone. I mean more if they need to be kept in solitary confinement, if being around people is more beneficial for them, and generally taking into consideration the individual person's needs, which again is an incredibly idealistic view. But again, this is more about my views as opposed to reality. So another part of punishment that links to deterrence is it sets an example. Now, there was an incredibly unfortunate example of this with the Count Dankula case. And the reason that got so far into courts when it shouldn't have was because he was being used as an example to other people. The reason this is a failure of a deterrent is because it was a really dumb case, and he should never have gone that far. So part of setting an example is punishing the right people in the right way. You cannot just suddenly turn around and give someone a 10-year sentence for something minor because you want to stop those minor crimes, but showing that if you commit those crimes you will be punished, even if it's a short sentence or a fine, that is the deterrent. When it comes to punishment, there does in fact need to be an element of punishment, and this can take various forms, but they should never be taken too far. For instance, taking people out of society is a punishment, physically locking them up. However, doing this for years completely impedes their existence and impedes on the rehabilitation stage. Giving them small jobs to do, or manual labour, if they choose to, can be a punishment. However, it can also be used quite negatively to force things like a form of slavery, essentially. And this is where it becomes quite hard to punish people, because a lot of criminals show disregard for authority, and so not all punishments will work for them. I don't mean to treat it as if people are beyond saving, but people will respond differently. And even if they do respond differently, it should still be handled in a good manner. Now, one of the underlying things with the prison system, and this is a bit of a tangent I don't want to touch on too much, is the fact I do not believe in the death penalty. There are many reasons for this, just to quickly sum them up, and that is that it gives too much power into something that can create large mistakes. So when I talk about a prison system, I never include that as a concept. It is more the focus on punishing them and rehabilitating them. So on to rehabilitation. This is the most important part of what a prison system should be. There is no point punishing someone if that punishment renders them unable to reintegrate into society. It's pointless. It just completely negates anything you've done before. What's the point of deterring someone from a crime if when they eventually commit it, you've completely destroyed their life? Again, this has its layers. There is an argument to be made that not everyone can be saved, and that there are people who are beyond hope. But I think that's just ignorance, or a lack or an inability to cover all ways you can treat someone. So when it comes to rehabilitation, the thing that most comes to my mind are the Norwegian prisons that treat their prisoners essentially as people. And one of the most important things in their treatment of prisoners is to maintain the ways of life outside of prison, how society functions. So having time to be with people, having time to eat, time to sleep, but this all being more in line with freedom, because a lot of cases is when people leave prison, they are no longer able to function in society, because it's similar to going into the military. Those forms of functionality are completely destroyed and rebuilt. And once that happens, this leads to a lot of reoffending, because they can't live outside. The only option they have is to go back to what they know, and that is committing crimes. These Norwegian prisons have 1 in 5 people who come back to the prison system, whereas in America, 3 out of 4 people within 5 years will be back in the prison system. This shows there's something inherently wrong with one system and something positive in the other. Obviously, statistics aren't perfect, so looking at both of them, you need to take away what is good and bad about both. So why do only 1 in 4 people in America not reoffend, and why do 1 in 5 people in Norway do reoffend? And that is what I've attempted to discuss. And I think the real key point with an effective prison system is treating people like people. It doesn't matter if you're a criminal, you shouldn't have all of your rights taken away from you. Obviously, some criminals need some of their rights taken away. For instance, if you're a danger to society, you should no longer be allowed near society until you are not. And I think it's the until you are not, the rehabilitation stage, that often gets overlooked. I've been familiar with rehabilitation for most of my life, not personally, but through other people I've known who've worked in the area, and I know it can do a lot of good. But I also understand it's a very careful thing, and it is something that needs to be done correctly, if done at all. Because badly rehabilitating someone is not rehabilitation in the slightest, and it will only make things worse. So I'm not particularly sure what this video was or where it was going. It was just a discussion of something I'd seen in the news, really, which led on to a wider point. I don't really have a conclusion besides the fact that I think most prison systems are ineffective, and I think it's incredibly hard to fix that. I don't think it will be possible, just because of the sheer scale of individuality that needs to be considered, which is incredibly unfortunate. One of the bigger reasons between America and Norway is population size. It's magnitudes more, and that has a lot of issues tied to it, although America does have some more specific ones. My hope is more to just encourage dialogue of these things, and also an understanding that being a criminal shouldn't be the end of your life, no matter what stage it is. So I hope more than anything that this video has just given you something to think of, and that's really all I wanted from it. So I hope it's done that. My videos recently have been a bit more intense in terms of subject. I don't know how to really move back towards doing stuff that's more fun at this point. But if you like my new kind of feeling of video, give it a like. Subs always appreciated. I mean, I am hoping to continue producing content, and I hope there are people out there who will continue to want to see it. Also add a comment. Maybe you think all of my ideas are dumb. Maybe you think I've gotten stuff wrong, and I might have done. I did do research for this video, but it doesn't mean it was perfect. And I do enjoy dialogue. So go ahead, I don't want these videos to feel like something closed. So thank you for watching.